The Petrov defense challenge level. So in the challenge level, we're going to look at three things. First of all, if your opponent takes on e4, the copycat defense, and then they really try to not lose their knight, what do? This is pretty common. If you're a strong player, maybe you play a bunch of weak players to help train, or you do simuls, playing a bunch of players at once. You're going to see this copycat, and then they're going to realize they're in trouble. So we'll see what happens with that. Then we're going to look at the Cochrane Gambit, where you're actually going to give away your knight for 2 pawns. And it's kind of unsound, meaning it's, not going to be played by grandmasters against each other, but it's still a fun one to know. And then finally, we're going to look at a mistake that was made by Anand, and he lost a game in just 6 moves. And this was the same year that he became a grandmaster, 1988. So let's have a look at these games. So first of all, if your opponent captures here and then they realize they're in trouble, like, oh yeah, I realize now if I move my knight, they get a discovered check. So they guard it with their pawn, and you go to chase it, and now they play queen e7. All right, bad news, you're not winning a piece anymore. Good news, you're still going to win a pawn. So you just have to accept that. It's good to know this line so you don't have to figure it out when you're playing in the games. So you capture, and now because their queen is pinned, you've won a pawn in this variation. Okay, now we're going to look at the Cochrane Gambit. And the Cochrane Gambit is the same Petrov defense to start. You capture the pawn, but now instead of you retreating your knight back to f3, that's the normal move, and then after they capture, then you can play d4, that's the main line. But instead of that, you're going to go forward and play knight takes f7. And so obviously what you get for that, 2 pawns plus your opponent's king is exposed. And here's the little trap that you set right away. You play d4 and they can't take your e-pawn. If they play knight takes e4, then you pick up the knight with this check. It's either going to lead to a fork, or if they step over, it's going to lead to a pin. And of course, oh, that got really bad. Instead of putting pressure on the knight, you took advantage of it being pinned and played bishop g5 to win their queen. So that's the main trap, is after they take your knight at f7, you play d4. Now they may not capture. They may play d5, for example, and now you can play e5. And when their knight comes in here, he's a bit weak, right? He's really going to have to worry about it. When you capture it, they'll take back, and you're going to have a very strong pawn center. They're going to take a little while to get their king to safety. Obviously, you'll be castling. A big part of this is getting your knight out to c3 and putting pressure on the center as well. That's the Cochrane Gambit. And now finally, let's have a look at a game that Anand lost. Anand was black in this game, and his opponent, Alonso Zapata, this is back in 1988. As I mentioned, the same year that Anand became a grandmaster. Anand played Petrov's defense and capture. He pushes the knight back, and now Zapata plays this line that I saw Shirov play and win with. And the idea is that you didn't even have to gambit a pawn. If your opponent plays knight takes c3, then you get to play d takes. Looks like that Boden-Kieseritzky that we looked at in the progressive level. If you haven't watched that video, go back and watch that. So Anand said, oh yeah, I don't want to capture that and give you all those open lines. So he plays bishop out, and he loses. After queen e2, his knight is pinned to the king, and there's no way to save it. So after queen e7, to try to protect the knight and break the pin at the same time, the knight just jumps into d5. And of course, if queen e6, there's the fork. And if the queen runs off to the side, then you get to play what you had planned in the first place, which is d3, winning the knight. All right, those are some sidelines and Petrov's defense. Good luck. I'll check you later.